Okay, so another method of reading comprehension is you read the passage before you read the questions. And when you read the passage, you have to be very thorough with your annotations. The method I'm going to talk about is mostly used by people. When they initially start off with reading comprehension, when they do classes in courses on reading comprehension in school, they are taught to do this, read in this particular way, which is read your passage, get an idea of what's there in the passage, and then go and answer the questions. The problem with that approach, especially when it relates to SAT and ACT kind of questions, is that the questions are mostly going to be global. They are not going to tell you that these questions go to this paragraph. To answer these questions, go to the other paragraph. To answer these questions, go to these line numbers. They'll just give you questions without telling you where in the passage you can go to look for the right material. So students who do not do well in the reading comprehension part of the SAT or ACT, what they're doing is they're wasting most of their time in identifying the right or relevant location of the passage where they can go to get an answer for these questions. So in the worst case, what will happen? You'll read question number 1, it's asking about the author's house. And you know that there was some discussion somewhere in the passage about this author's house, but you don't know where. So what you'll do is you'll read the whole thing, looking for the house. So you answer question number 1, right? You already spent a lot of time. You've read it once already. Then the next question number 2 says, what is the color of the author's car? And at that point, you know that you read about the author's car somewhere in passing, but you really didn't note where it was and you forgot what was the color of the car. Or they'll say, this particular book was published in 1999, but 5 years later, it became a bestseller. And then the question would be, in which year did this book become the bestseller? And you have lost track of that. Somewhere you read about 1999, but the question is asking about 1999 plus 5 years later. So that would be 2004 is when the book became a bestseller. When you make these connections, annotations, especially relationships between dates, places, people, events, while you are annotating and make the annotation stay on the margin, then when you get a question like that, you would be able to go directly to that location. And you can say from there that, okay, this is the particular year in which it became a bestseller. So that's the value of having a lot of good annotations. So first thing I'll do is work through the passage without worrying about the questions. This is a different method. I'm going to read the passage and annotate the heck out of it. And knowing fully well that at the end of all this, I'll probably throw away 70% of my annotations. I annotated assuming everything was important, but the questions are only a few. But I am trying to prevent going through the passage again and again for every question. That's the fault in that method. If you do not do a very good annotation, that's the fallacy. You just read, you get a gist, and most people are lazy. They will not want to annotate. They may even start annotating the first paragraph, but then forget about that in the second. And they think that I got it. But no. So what are important? One very important thing that you need for annotations is understand and mark out relations. Relations are very important because a lot of questions are asking you about relations between dates, places, people, event, and so on. So when I read this, I'll start like this. This passage is from Lydia Minatoya. So Lydia Minatoya is the author, and the name of the book is The Strangeness of Beauty. So that's the, you can just call it the book. And this was written in 1999, but the setting is 1920 Japan. So that's the relationship. So a relationship is like a graph where you have a few vertices and lines connecting these graphs as well. So Chi and her daughter Naomi are members of the House of Fuji. So we got Chi, we got Naomi, and we got the House of Fuji, a noble family. Akira, well, this guy is a new guy, so I don't know who Akira is. Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Okay, so some tradition was broken here. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would Chi have been more receptive? So Chi, I already know who that is. So this guy is having a bit of doubt. And to go from point X to point Y, it looks like he needs somebody as a go-between. Now, I don't know if there's any question about this part. Like, what was Akira's doubt, or what was he having trouble with? How exactly did he break a tradition? But I made this annotation just to help me understand what's going on in this passage. Next paragraph. He came on a winter's evening. He pounded on the door, cold rain beating on the shuttered veranda. So at first, she thought it was only the wind. The maid knew better. She heard a soft, scuffling footsteps that creak of the door. Then the maid brought a calling card to the drawing room for Chi. So this is the setup. A setup is basically giving you the background, environment in which all this is happening. Typically, prose fictions will have setups like that. Okay? So it's like the curtain raiser.
Yeah, like imagery they're turning into. Yeah.
Yes. Then, so Chi got the calling card. Good. So at this point, she was reluctant to go to her guest. Perhaps she was feeling too cozy. She and Naomi were reading at a low table set atop a charcoal brazier. A thick kilt spread over the sides of the table so their legs were tucked inside with the head. So that is more of the setup. So I would say this whole setup business is going on here. This may be outdoor and this would be indoor. Again, I don't know if they have a question, but I had the foresight to note that, because if there was a question like what was the environment in which Chi and Naomi were spending the evening, was it cold, was it hot, and so on, warm, or was it comfortable, was it not comfortable, were Chi and Naomi getting drenched in the rain or not, I can go back, double check on my indoor and outdoor notes, and I'll be fine with it.
So outdoors with Akira and Chi, and I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So Akira is outdoor, indoor is Chi. So you could just also make a case like we got Akira who was actually outdoor, and Chi plus Naomi were actually indoor. So you could make that note. There's nothing. And good annotators do that all the time. They find the relationships. So these lines that we are drawing now, these are relationships actually. And the events or places or dates or people, they are the nodes in our vertices. So that's how you're annotating. But you cannot annotate a little bit and then say, okay, I'm done, I'm good. The rest I can manage, I'm running out of time. Because that's what will happen with your annotation. You will run out of time quite a bit. And once you run out of time, you will blame the method. And say, oh, this method doesn't work for me because it's taking me too long. What you should really do is do this faster. And see, if I were taking this test without explaining things to you, I would do this way faster. I'm not going to sit and explain what I'm drawing, that this is a dependency, this is a vertex, this is a edge, this is a graph. I would just have my method so well oiled that I'll just go through this very, very quickly. So if you see these annotators, they are like shorthand note takers. They go very fast with that. What we are doing is shorthand note taking, if you think about it. That is another way of doing shorthand note taking, right? So again, I'm not going to go through the whole example, but if there was a description of some things, just to give you other examples of annotation. So there's a courtyard being mentioned over here with paving stones. So I could say something like, okay, this is a house and this is the courtyard of the house, and there was a bunch of paving stones on the courtyard. You could even make an image like this. So later on, if there was a question about, was a courtyard made of mud, or was it grass covered, or was it stone covered, you know where in the passage to go looking for it, right? Again, Akira was in his early 20s, slim, serious, wearing black military style uniform. So this is Akira's description. So I would have something like this. So if there was a question about what is Akira's build, somebody who did not annotate at all will start reading from here, and they will keep going through the whole thing. Eventually, after spending 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, they'll get to this point and they'll say, oh, okay, I got it. But then the next question could be the courtyard on which Akira was standing, what was it made of? And again, you didn't note anything. So you'll start from here again, and then you come and find it finally over here. That, okay, there's this. So always remember, the methods I'm talking about, each of these methods has one common thread, and that is read once. Do not read more than once. If you catch yourself reading all over the place, trying to locate an important part of the passage, which will help you answer a question, then you did a bad job of annotation. That is why you are having to go all over the place looking for it, because you missed an annotation. On the flip side of that, it's very expensive to make annotations like this. It is going to cost you time. So my recommendation for when you have like 12 minutes for a passage, your annotation should not exceed 5 minutes for sure. You should be somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes with your annotation, so that you have enough time to go and answer all these questions. So even if you think today my annotation takes 10 minutes, there is no way I can do this method, that's a wrong way of thinking. You can always bring down those 10 minutes to 5 minutes and become an expert annotator. It needs a lot of self-discipline and mental acumen, concentration to go on annotating. Sometimes I'll find something here and then I'll find something here and I'll make a connection. See, it comes back to this thing that I was talking about before. It's all about relations. So relations means you will have a vertex, something important. That thing could be person, place, event, date, and another important thing, and you make a connection between these two important things. These are the ones which will be useful for answering your questions that will come up later. Okay?